Florida, you got Florida State, you got Miami. Hey, Nick, let's pull up the top 10 as it were when we jumped off the air. I believe this is still current. You see the timestamp there at the bottom of your screen. As of 1:10 Central,
we went over
2:10 Eastern.
It was correct when the show started, and this thing changes literally by the minute, but this is a snapshot of what it looked like when we went live and as it stands right now. So you got dogs on top. We already covered that, but there was a couple big movers today, and that's Texas, Oregon, and Miami. Miami was inside the top 5 at one point, and they still got a little bit of ammo left on the board. There's a 5-star defensive lineman named Armando Blunt that's committed to Florida State. We're not going to go too far into this one. There's a whole backstory on this. This isn't the On 3 Recruits channel, so we're just going to keep it on top. But Armando Blunt, his signing isn't until 6 p.m., and all signs point to him flipping from Florida State to Miami. So if you pull up the rankings one more time, you look at this. Florida State's sitting there at 6 and Miami's at 8. If Florida State loses Armando Blunt, which I fully expect to happen at 6 p.m. Central, then you're looking at Florida State potentially falling out or right into the 10 spot, and Miami is going to move up mightily because that's a 5-star recruit. They could be sitting there at 4 or 5 when this all goes down. So I think in the end, we saw a complete shift in the state of Florida. Florida had a top 5 class. Florida State had a top 5 class. Miami was sitting there at 9 or 10 entering the day. But when the day's over, Florida's free fall to number 14 was breathtaking. Really didn't see them falling that far. But Florida State, they are also going to be trying to hang on to a top 10 class while Miami is surging. So it all goes down on signing day in the state of Florida.
Of course, and it's so great that we're live right now, so the folks listening back on podcast are going to go back to this and say, wait, they were at what point? At what point in time during signing day they were ranked where? Well, that changed drastically based on the next couple of hours. So if you're listening to this in the future, this is what's happening right now, so enjoy whatever's happening going forward now. But Miami, we got to talk about Miami because it feels so much to me like, one, the ACC is very winnable. That's not to say anything less of Florida State because they obviously had a tremendous season this past year. But you look at the downfall of Clemson, you look at the question marks at quarterback at this time being right now when it comes to Florida State, and the way Miami's trending. The last couple of classes, including this one, likely being in the top 10, and the way that Mario Cristobal has brought a new edge and a new persona to Miami. Like, you think Miami, you think, the brand that they are, you think the beach, you think a little bit more flash than substance. Mario Cristobal, if there's one thing he is, I wholeheartedly believe it is substance, and I think the just nature that he brings to providing more structure to Miami, if they can put this talent in an apparatus that's going to be able to maximize it, I think they're going to be in a really good spot to compete for something, especially when that college football playoff expands all the way. So it's going to be it's going to be massive. I mean, they, to me, we'll talk about our big winners later, but they were one of the big winners to me today, Josh.
Yeah, and I think the characteristics of this class is Mario's ability to win battles on the defensive line. Last year for Miami, it was offensive line. They really improved that offensive unit. This year, flipping Justin Scott from Ohio State 4 weeks ago was kind of the catalyst to Miami's run. But you look at their D-line class, and it's excellent. They did what they needed to do. Flipping Armando Blunt tonight is just the cherry on the cake because they landed Justin Scott. They landed Marquise Lightfoot. Now you're going to add another elite defensive lineman to this unit that already has Ruben Bain on it, and you're starting to see it come together. It's got to start in the trenches, and Mario has time, and he's just kind of methodically knocking it out. Last year was O-line. This year it's D-line.
And the playmakers, too. I mean, they got a couple of big-time wide receivers, most notably Nye Carr, flipping from Georgia to Miami. And they've kicked the door down on some pretty big flips. You mentioned Justin Scott from Ohio State. You don't go to Ohio State and steal defensive linemen that frequently. It doesn't really happen in a place like Ohio State. And for Georgia to take a wide receiver from Kirby Smart, like, that should mean something if you're a Miami fan. You should feel good about the direction and the edge your program has, starting with your head coach in the recruiting trail, being able to land top guys like that. Because I think what starts in the recruiting trail comes to the field more often than not later.
And we're seeing them win these battles. Ohio State ended up being the kind of the whipping boy for Miami a little bit. They flip Justin Scott. When Marquise Lightfoot, a 6'5", 220-pound edge, the number 7 ranked edge in the country, he was trending heavily. He's from Chicago, Illinois. He was trending heavily to Ohio State. Miami lands him. Then you got Jordan Lyle, who just 48 hours ago flips his commitment, 4-star running back from South Florida, flips his commitment from Ohio State to Miami. Shades of Mark Fletcher last year. Mark Fletcher, we remember, he made a big impact for Miami this year. Last year at this time, he was flipping from Ohio State to Miami. Now you see it again with Justin Scott. These guys are making immediate impacts.
They got some ballers in Miami. They got the ticket in the door. Talent will get you in the door, but you got to be able to kick it down once take down the competition once you get into the door, and they're definitely in the door right now with what they have. Let's talk about Florida State. And a year ago, they were somewhere in that top 25 range. This year, they're at the time of us being live, again, that's the key phrase, they are in that top 10 range, sitting there at 6 right now. For Florida State, the frustrating thing is like, okay, we're not top 5 right now. That could change by the time we get off the air. But there's also the feeling like, well, we're in the top 10. Like, we have worked through the portal previously. We used to go out to eat a lot, get our guys through the portal. Now we're going to the grocery store and bringing the ingredients to the house, developing it internally, and making the meal we want. Big product of the undefeated season, you'd have to imagine, correct?
It was. I think Florida State fans are a bit disappointed today, especially if they fall at or nearly out of the top 10. I think that's a little bit of a blow. But if you stack classes on top of each other, Mike Norvell, this is a very much improved high school class. I've been critical of Mike Norvell all the time when it comes to recruiting the high school level. I've said repeatedly, he needs to recruit the high school level better. Caught a lot of flack for that, but it's the truth, JD. Florida State finishing at 20 or 21 is not going to get the job done. No. Florida State finishing at 7, 8, 9, 10 is definitely a step in the right direction, and it's proving that Mike Norvell is indeed recruiting the high school level better. But until you sign guys like a KJ Bolt, you got to get them across the finish line. And Armando Blunt, you need those 5-star defensive linemen. You can't let an LJ McCray get away to your rival, the Florida Gators, who didn't even make a bowl when you're 13-0. So even though they did a much better job recruiting the high school level, I still think, and I can still see where Florida State fans can be a little disappointed today.
The terrifying thing to me here is, if this is the new normal for Mike Norvell, where they're going to be elite in the portal and be really good on the recruiting trail and turn in right around top 10 classes year after year, like, they might as well get a timeshare in the 12-team college football playoff. Even if they're not winning the ACC, they're going to be one of those at-large teams, it feels like, every single year by nature of the roster they are putting together. So for Mike Norvell and company, the day is still not finished up just yet, but if you land somewhere in the top 10, I think that has to feel pretty good for the folks in Tallahassee.
And Mike Norvell has proven on the field that he can do more with less. I mean, the roster that he inherited, he turned them into continuous winners. They've continued to get better under Mike Norvell, and now he's got the roster to where he wants it to be. So I still expect them to be in that top tier every year when they recruit. And this is just a step in the right direction. I think Florida State fans were hoping for a leap in the right direction this cycle, but still a vast improvement and still a very, very good class for Florida State.
Just looking ahead to next year, not to say anything about Tate Rodemaker or anything about Brock Glenn, bro, if they land the right guy through the portal to play quarterback for them,
sure.
Ooh, boy. You're cooking with gas in Tallahassee.
This is all about talent acquisition, and the best way to improve your roster is through the quarterback position. Mike Norvell seems to have a couple good guys right now on the line with DJU and Cam Ward, and he's going to have his pick of the top guys when it's all said and done. Without question. Hey, let's move on here to Florida. Sure. The Gators, not the day you probably had hoped for if you're a Gator fan by nature of how they felt. I believe at the time of us being live, they are right around number 14. And where did they start? Started the day within the top 10, I believe the folks in Gainesville. So just a tough couple of breaks, also some other teams catching breaks, quite frankly. The big thing, though, Josh, if you had to point to one thing to be fired up about, if you're a Gator fan, inked the signature of a one DJ Lagway, who is obviously Lagway. I mean, he's who you're tying, the future to if you're a Gator fan, correct? I mean, what do you make of this, Josh? It's kind of a tough situation here. The Gators had a tough day, but this class is a success if you sign DJ Lagway. I think that's been done or is going down as we speak. I don't have, I know there's been reports about A&M and about Clemson, and I fully expect, whether it's already happened or not, but I fully expect DJ Lagway to be a Florida Gator for the next 3 to 4 years of his career. He is, in fact, signed. He is signed per the On3. So all the drama is over, whatever drama there was. But, hey, Gators have 18 commitments. I think they went into the day with 22 or 23 commitments. So, there was a bit of a stumble out of the top 10. It's got to be a big blow to have these guys committed since June, to have the word is, hey, these relationships matter. We know we got to win on the field, but the relationships are there. These recruits understand what Billy Napier's doing. But in the end, when pen hits paper, it's hard for somebody like Xavier Filsaime to turn down the in-state Texas Longhorns with all the excitement and everything that they got going. It's hard for Amaris Williams out of North Carolina to not flip his commitment to Auburn. And LJ McCray right now still hasn't signed as of when we're taping this. I don't know if that necessarily is because of other teams jumping in, but you'd like to get some of these guys in. But a tough day, but some really good recruits. When the dust settles and Florida fans can kind of get past the pain of losing a couple recruits on signing day, they're going to look at this class and they're going to see a lot of high quality players that are going to contribute a lot for the Gators in the future.
I think if I'm a Florida fan, all this tells me is, hey, let's go to the portal, baby. Like, hey, maybe we didn't get the exact kind of guys we wanted to get from this class. Maybe we wish we were a little bit higher on the team recruiting rankings, but that's what the portal's for there, baby. I mean, Florida State, they were, I think, 21 last year. So you haven't fallen quite that far at the time of us being live. But again, just it's not over with. It's not necessarily the greatest encouragement, but getting your quarterback for the future, I think that's the one thing I'd hang my hat on if I'm a Florida fan.
Too. That's the story of the day. If you're a Gator fan, celebrate this DJ Lagway signing and don't worry about the decommits. Everything's going to work out, but DJ Lagway coming to Gainesville is huge.
Let's ride the wave, baby.
Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.